From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. 3 million. That is the number of refugees from Ukraine, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. And among them, 90% are women and children. And the plight of many of these refugees is heart-wrenching. To get a sense of the unfolding humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, I'm joined by Chris Melzer, the spokesperson for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Chris, thank you so much for doing this. First of all, can you give our audience a sense of the scope of the humanitarian crisis unfolding and also the life of a refugee, which to many of our average viewers can be difficult to imagine?
It is difficult to imagine even for the people who are right now refugees. So many told me, we have never expected that we need to leave our home because there are bombs and grenades and other things. So it is terrible to be a refugee, to lose everything. Then you have to flee. Then you have probably have your loved ones. You have to leave them behind. Right now, the situation is that 3.2 million refugees are outside of Ukraine, and there are another 2 million people who fled inside the country, so are internally displaced persons. And this in only 3 weeks. So the conflict started to this day 3 weeks ago, and we have already about 5 million people who had to flee their homes. Wow,
that is a lot. Considering the population of Ukraine.
Yes, so 1 out of 8 Ukrainians is now a displaced person in the country or outside of the country. And we are afraid that the figure is still rising. Not that much anymore like in the first 2 weeks, but day by day it's another 150,000 people who are fleeing Ukraine. Our estimate was up to 4 million, and I'm afraid this is a very plausible figure.
Right. Chris, there are so many needs of a refugee, right? In the short run, I suppose it would be food, water, shelter, personal hygiene, and health. But in the medium to long run, many of them face an uncertain future as to whom to go to or which country to call home again. How are the UNHCR catered to the various needs of these refugees?
Well, in the host countries like Poland or Romania, we are not, how we call it, operational. So this is the matter of these countries, of the Polish government or the Romanian governments. We are focusing on our work in Ukraine. But what we see in Poland, of course, we are there also present, and we try to help. UNHCR has the experience of more than 70 years working in 135 countries. We offer this experience to cope with this situation here. But what these countries are doing, the governments and especially the very ordinary people doing extraordinary things, this is just amazing. So the solidarity warms my heart every day.
But what are some of the practical challenges on the ground when the agency is trying to help out and trying to cater to the needs of these refugees?
Well, let's take the Ukraine as an example. We are still there and we will not leave. We have about 120 people working there for UNHCR, men and women doing 20-hour shifts every day. And what they're doing is that they distribute relief items like sleeping bags, mattresses, diapers, and similar things. But we are also looking for some places to stay. So when we find a school or a sporting hall, that we put 100 or 150 field beds in that, so that people who had to leave home could stay there for a while. And yes, also we try to negotiate these humanitarian corridors so that our help can go in and the people can go out.
Chris, in a reception center in the Polish border town of Medyka, you said you met one of the youngest refugees who is, this pains me to say this, who is only 2 months old. His name is Andriy. Can you tell us a bit about his story?
Yes, I met Andriy 2 weeks ago with his aunt and his mother, and they had to flee when he was only 6 weeks old, actually, really a tiny baby, who of course have no idea what this means to be a refugee. and the father had to stay behind in Kharkiv, in the city. The baby is now indeed in Poland, is safe with his mother and his aunt. But of course, the mother and the aunt, they are desperate because the little baby was a sign of hope, and now it's also a symbol of being a refugee, and they wishing nothing more than just that they can just return in a safe country.
Is there, a secure line of communication with the father back home? Is there any word on when the son, the kid, and the father can meet again?
Well, there is a kind of communication because they are using internet, of course, sending photos, sending videos, or doing video calls or something like that. But no one really knows at what point the refugees can go home. This is, by the way, one of the two sentences I've heard every day on the border. It was really the question, what do you think, when can we go home? We cannot answer this question. We wish that the refugees can go home very soon. I wouldn't mind if I would be unemployed, but we just can't answer this question. The other sentence I've heard most, by the way, was from the children asking me very often, or telling me very often, I miss Daddy so much.
Yeah, it breaks my heart. It breaks the hearts of many to hear this and to know this. But let's move on and talk about what we can do. Russia said it established humanitarian corridors. Many sides called on Russia to honor this promise. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister also said that at least 9 humanitarian corridors were open, with 150 civilians escaping areas like Mariupol, Kyiv, and Sumy. How is the UNHCR working with the belligerents to guarantee a safe passage?
We are only one part of the team. So United Nations is doing this with OCHA, for example, the Office of the Humanitarian Coordinator. But we are always a part of this team to negotiate this kind of secure pathways. We really need these humanitarian corridors, as I already said, not only to take the people out into safety, but also to bring our help in. For example, every day our trucks, our convoys going from Poland to Ukraine to help the displaced people or the people in need there. And the estimate of the United Nations is that 12 million people, so more than 25% of the Ukrainians need assistance, need help, and we try to provide that.
Chris, many predicted that this would be a decisive battle, but it looks like this could be a war of attrition, if you will. That means this war can go on and on. Is the agency prepared for this eventuality? What concrete measures have been put in place in Ukraine and across the borders?
Yeah, we have our experience of so many decades, of so many countries, but of course you can't really be prepared for this. Although we did a lot, for example, our stockpiles in Ukraine, where we put a lot of more in our warehouses there, especially the relief items we need most, like blankets, sleeping bags, and so on. Our staff is still there. No one of them has left. And we have our contingency plans to help these refugees as good as we to help the people in Ukraine and also the refugees outside of the country as good as we can. But as you have mentioned, the time is really a factor here. So if this situation goes on and on and on, and the war goes probably for many months, then it will be a much bigger challenge compared to right now.
Is this something you've seen before?
It depends. I'm part of the emergency response team of UNHCR, so we have to be sometimes within 72 hours all over the world. And I was, for example, in Bangladesh. Kutupalong is the biggest refugee camp in the world. I was in Ethiopia, for example, and the similar pictures. Families trying to seek safety, trying to rescue their children. And the same pictures we have right now in Ukraine. What is different for me is this is just right next door for me now. I'm from Germany, so this goes on the border between Poland and Ukraine, and also the pace of the situation is so much faster. But on the other hand, it's unfortunately a picture I know very well, and this is depressing.
So according to UNHCR, its mandate is to provide on a non-political and humanitarian basis international protection to refugees and to seek permanent solutions for them. So in the case of Ukraine, what is the single biggest challenge for your agency to uphold that mandate?
Well, since we're working in Ukraine, I think the biggest problem is right now that we have to work with only a few people. Again, no one have left, but it's only 120 people working there in a very big country with millions of people who would need, and we are still underfunded. So we had a flash appeal last week asking for $1.7 billion. Sounds like a lot of money, but it's actually not much if you see the scale of the whole situation. And that's why we really hope for more support from the international community. This is not a Ukrainian crisis and not a Ukrainian-Polish crisis. This is actually a worldwide crisis, and that's why we are so grateful for the international solidarity.
Chris, the mandate of the agency includes advocating for national or multilateral policies on behalf of these refugees. Through our camera, what would your message be to national governments on behalf of these refugees tonight?
I would say thank you very much for your support. We received so many support from governments, also from the private sector, already $200 million. Thank you so much. We really need this to support the people, but actually, this is not enough yet. The scale of the whole situation is so big that we really need international solidarity. But actually, I'm quite confident that this solidarity will be there. We see signs that there's help all over the place, all over the world, and that lifts us up with UNHCR, that we are confident that we can help these people.
Chris Melzer, spokesperson for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all of your work.